This story is about a scientist who running a prison that barely feels like one. The inmates aren't locked behind bars. They have real room, decent food, and the freedom to walk around. That's the trick. Everyone there is being used for experiments, not physical ones, emotional ones. Their feelings are the test subject. Joy, fear, attraction, obedience, all of it can be switched on or off. Over time, that comfort turns into its own kind of punishment, and eventually the people inside realize they're done playing along. It begins with a plane landing on a quiet island, the kind of place that looks peaceful from the air. A group of inmates are escorted off and taken to a facility called Spiderhead. The building looks clean and modern, more like a tech campus than a correctional center. Inside, they're told how things work. Everyone gets their own room, they can choose their daily jobs, they're allowed to move around freely. Compared to a normal prison, this place feels almost generous. Almost. Every inmate has a small device permanently attached to their back. Inside it are cartridges filled with experimental drugs. Each one is designed to trigger a specific emotional response. The staff casually refers to these cartridges as movie packs. Before any test, the inmate is asked to agree. Once they do, the drug is released, and whatever emotion it controls takes over completely. The man running the entire operation is Steve Abnesty. He treats Spiderhead like his personal experiment lab. He's overly friendly, strangely upbeat, and clearly enjoys what he does. His assistant, Mark, handles the technical side, reading scripts and monitoring reactions. During one test, they give an inmate named Ray a drug called G46. The effect is immediate. Ray starts laughing uncontrollably, not normal laughter, the kind that doesn't stop. To push it further, Mark begins reading disturbing historical events, tragedies, atrocities, things that should kill the mood instantly. Ray keeps laughing through all of it, unable to control himself. Steve watches, fascinated. He takes notes, declares the trial successful, and even marks it with a gold star like he's grading homework. To him, this is progress. The next day, another inmate named Jeff is called in. He's blindfolded and led outside. This time, they use a drug called N40. When the blindfold comes off, Jeff is completely overwhelmed. Everything looks stunning to him. The colors, the light, the space around him. He struggles to put it into words, so they give him another drug, B15, which helps with expression. Suddenly, he can describe what he's seeing in calm, almost poetic language. Then, the drugs wear off. Jeff looks around again and realizes the truth. The place isn't beautiful at all. It's worn down, messy, uncomfortable. The beauty he felt was never real. It was chemically forced. Later, Jeff heads to the kitchen where another inmate named Lizzie is working. He offers to help. It's not about the job. He likes her. Working side by side gives him a reason to stay close. They talk, joke, and quietly share their thoughts about the experiments and what they're doing to everyone inside. That night, Jeff sits alone in his room, sketching aimlessly. His mind drifts backward, replaying the moment that changed everything. Before Spiderhead, there was a party. Jeff is there with his best friend Adam, girlfriend Emma. The night is loud and reckless. Jeff drinks too much, way too much. When it's time to leave, he insists on driving anyway. On the way home, he loses control of the car and slams into a tree. Adam doesn't make it. That single decision is what puts Jeff in Spiderhead. And no matter how many drugs they test on him, that guilt never fades. Not long after, Jeff gets pulled in for another test. This time, he's not alone. He's seated across from another inmate, a woman named Heather. Before anything happens, Steve slows things down and makes a point of asking questions. He wants it on record that the two of them have never spoken before. No past interaction, no connection. Then he asks something blunt. Are you attracted to each other? Both Jeff and Heather say no. No hesitation, no awkward pause, just a clean answer. That's when Mark triggers N40. The shift is instant. Jeff's attention locks onto Heather. Hers does the same. Whatever distance existed between them disappears. They lean in, they touch, they talk like they're deeply connected, like this is something that's been building for years. The words come easily, even though none of it is real.
Steve watches closely, but doesn't celebrate yet. He wants to see what happens once the drug fades. Later, Jeff heads to the food station. Heather steps up for a tray. This time, there's nothing. No spark, no discomfort, no sign they were ever paired at all. They barely acknowledge each other. Steve notices. He looks disappointed, so he decides to escalate. The next test crosses a line even faster. Jeff is brought into a room with an elderly woman. Before anyone can explain, Jeff says no, flat out refuses. He tells them he won't do it. They don't care. He's given a double dose anyway. The drug takes over, and once again, his body does things his mind is trying to stop. When it's over, the damage is already done. Later, Mark stops by to replace Jeff's movie pack. While working, he casually mentions that the device is sensitive. A hard hit, even an accident, could break it. If that happens, the effects wouldn't be controlled anymore. He tells Jeff to be careful, especially during physical contact. Jeff uses the moment to ask for a change. He says he's done working the snack station, wants something else. He doesn't explain further. Mark agrees without pushing. The next day, Jeff finds out what something else means. He's now sitting at the main desk, working directly with Steve and Mark. For the next trial, 2 rooms are prepared. In one, an inmate named Dave is alone, eating compulsively, unable to stop himself. In the other room, Heather is seated beside another inmate named Sarah. Steve explains the assignment to Jeff. He wants Jeff to choose one of the women and administer a drug called Darken Phlox. He deplays it, says it's just a stimulant, temporary, no lasting harm. Jeff doesn't move. He refuses to pick. When Steve presses him, Jeff explains calmly. He says he doesn't feel anything toward either woman. If he had to choose, it would be random. That's not the point. The real reason he won't do it is because he's been given Darken Phlox before, and he hated it. That catches Steve's attention. Jeff has already been through multiple emotional drugs: desire, attraction, compliance, and yet, no matter what they use, his reactions keep circling the same place. Later, Lizzie finds Jeff and asks why he wanted to change jobs. Before he can answer, a guard steps in and tells Jeff he's done for the day. Jeff goes outside and makes a call. It's to Emma. Like always, it doesn't go through. He leaves a voicemail. He apologizes, says he misses her. Then, without fully explaining himself, he mentions Lizzie too. Not long after, Jeff is sent into another room. This time, it's with a large inmate named Rogan. Jeff immediately says he doesn't want any drug. He makes it clear he's not attracted to men. The staff lets him enter without administering anything. Still unsettled, Jeff heads back to the control room and starts asking questions. That's when he learns something he wasn't supposed to know. Earlier, Heather had been asked to administer Darken Phlox herself. She was given a choice, Jeff or Rogan. She refused, and that refusal reveals something else. Heather had already been paired with Rogan before, which makes one thing clear: none of this is random. Not the pairings, not the choices, and definitely not the pressure they're putting on the inmates to make them.
This makes Jeff extremely angry, and he wants to check whether experiments have already been done on all the prisoners or not. Steve tells him about how all the prisoners have been connected with each other and explains that this was a mandatory test for everyone, ordered from higher authorities. Jeff says that these experiments are crossing all limits, but Steve reminds him that he is a prisoner, and if he refuses to participate in the experiments, he will be sent back to a traditional prison where he will have to face brutal torture from cruel guards. Jeff does not want to lose the facilities he is getting here, so he apologizes and agrees to get ready for the next test with Rogan. But luckily, Sarah also refuses to give the dose to either of them, and the test gets canceled. After this, Steve tells Mark that before giving this test a golden star, the 2 of them will also have to go through the test themselves. Hearing this, Mark feels uncomfortable, but Steve tells him that this test is necessary to make the world a better place, so Mark agrees. That evening, Steve gives himself a dose of N40. What the prisoners do not know is that Steve also has a movie pack device attached to his body. Meanwhile, during dinner, Jeff tells Lizzie how terrible Darken Phlox feels. During the conversation, Lizzie holds Jeff's hand and asks him the real reason why he changed his duty. Jeff tells her that in this place, his mind does not work properly, and sometimes he even forgets who he was with before coming here. He tells Lizzie that when he is with her, he feels good. The next Monday, Steve is ready to take a bigger risk and tells Mark to give him a triple dose. At that moment, Jeff arrives and sees them doing this. The 2 scientists quickly hide everything, so Jeff does not say anything and gets ready for the next experiment. Steve tells Jeff that the committee has ordered Darken Phlox testing to continue.
Steve has already kept Jeff under control by giving him certain chemical doses earlier, so Jeff has no choice. He gives Heather a dose of Darkenfloxx, which causes her to experience intense pain. Then Mark gives Jeff a dose of B15, because of which Jeff starts describing Heather's inner pain and fear in a very poetic way. He also clearly says that he does not love Heather. On the other hand, Heather becomes so panicked due to fear and anxiety that during the struggle, the movie pack attached to her back breaks. This causes Darkenfloxx to spread throughout her body, and she starts behaving violently. She breaks a flower vase and uses a shard of it to take her own life. Mark and Steve rush into the room to save her, but on the way, Steve drops his bunch of keys. Inside the room, Mark and Steve start arguing over the entire incident. Meanwhile, Jeff picks up the fallen keys and starts opening and checking Steve's belongings. He finds Steve's notebook, which gives him a lot of new information. He sees a piece of paper with a chemical formula called OBDX written on it, along with the logo of Abnesty Pharmaceuticals. This clearly means that there was no committee at all. Steve himself was the operator and owner of the company. The second thing Jeff notices is a bingo card where all the numbers have golden stars on them, except 6 and 40. The numbers under those stars match the numbers of the chemicals that had already been tested on the prisoners. The N40 drug had not yet succeeded in creating true love, which is why it had not received a star. And B6 was the drug that Mark regularly put into everyone's movie pack. Jeff doesn't have much time to process what just happened. He hears footsteps coming down the hall. Steve is on his way back. Jeff moves fast. He puts everything back exactly where it was, lets the keys fall to the floor, and steps away. By the time Steve enters, it looks like nothing's been touched. Later, Mark brings up the obvious problem. Heather is dead. He says they need to report it. Steve shuts him down immediately. Reporting it would expose everything: the experiments, the drugs, the lack of real oversight. He admits they crossed ethical lines long ago.
Stopping now wouldn't fix anything. It would only prove they were wrong. Steve then checks in on Jeff. Jeff is visibly shaken. Heather's death is eating at him. Steve starts out calm, almost kind, but Jeff isn't responding. So Steve changes his approach. He injects Jeff with the same drug he used earlier on Ray. Then he takes it himself. Seconds later, both of them are laughing uncontrollably. In between bursts of laughter, Steve casually drops personal details. He mentions that his father left when he was young. Jeff, still laughing and barely able to think straight, asks why Steve never leaves the facility the way Mark does. Steve answers without hesitation. This project is his life. It's the only thing that matters to him. Soon after, Lizzie becomes the next test subject. She's given a drug designed to trigger extreme fear. Everything becomes terrifying. Ordinary objects send her into panic. She screams at the sight of a stapler. When the drug finally wears off, she's humiliated and emotionally wrecked. She goes straight to Jeff and tells him what happened. That's when Jeff finally explains why he tried to switch duties. This is what he was trying to get away from. Lizzie can't understand how anyone would agree to these experiments just to live a little more comfortably. Jeff tells her the truth. He thinks he deserves it. Then he tells her what really happened the night of the crash. Adam didn't die alone. Emma died too. Jeff has been carrying that guilt ever since. Lizzie steps closer. She comforts him. They kiss. Later, they sit together and eat, quietly, like normal people for once. That's when Jeff leans in and shares a plan. At the same time, Steve is watching the surveillance feeds. He sees Jeff sketching Lizzie. To him, this looks like proof that the system is working. Emotional attachment, controlled bonding. He rewards himself with another dose of N40 and falls asleep. The next day, Steve calls Jeff in and orders him to administer Darkenfloxx to Lizzie. Jeff refuses. This time, Steve lets him leave. As soon as Jeff is gone, Steve tells Mark to double Jeff's daily dose of B6. Mark goes to Jeff's room to administer it. Jeff resists. He tells Mark he knows the truth now. There is no oversight committee. B6 isn't harmless, and this project isn't about helping the world. It's about Steve. That's when Mark finally cracks. He admits he joined because he believed in the science. He wanted to work with someone brilliant. He thought the research could actually help people. Now he regrets all of it. Jeff doesn't judge him. He understands. Together, they decide they can't let this continue. Mark goes home for the weekend. On Monday, he calls in sick. That leaves just Steve and Jeff in the testing room. Once again, Steve orders Jeff to administer Darkenfloxx to Lizzie. Once again, Jeff refuses. And this time, he's not backing down. Steve finally snaps. He can't wrap his head around what he's seeing. In his mind, love doesn't form just because two people share space and time. That idea threatens everything he believes. So he decides to break it. He orders Lizzie to confess her crime right there in front of Jeff. Lizzie collapses under the pressure. She's crying as she admits what she did. She once left her baby locked inside a car. The child didn't survive. When she finishes, she looks straight at Jeff and quietly asks him to give her the drug. Jeff turns toward the control panel. He presses the command, but nothing happens to Lizzie. Instead, Steve suddenly bursts into uncontrollable laughter. This wasn't a mistake. Mark was never sick. Earlier, he had rewritten the control system. On top of that, he secretly loaded extra B6 into Steve's movie pack. For the first time, Steve is the one being controlled. Jeff keeps going. He gives Steve the fear drug, then Darkenflox. Steve collapses, shaking, screaming, barely able to breathe. Jeff tells him it's over. Mark has already contacted the police. Everything is exposed now. Jeff explains the truth Steve refused to admit. B6 was never harmless. It was obedience. Even the technical name gives it away. Spiderhead was never about love. It was about control. Steve argues back through the pain. He insists the drugs failed because they couldn't erase real emotion. Then he drops one last truth. Jeff and Lizzie's sentences ended a long time ago. Steve just never told them. That's the moment Jeff loses control. He slams Steve's head into the table and forces his finger on the control panel, opening the front doors. He's done. He wants out, and he wants the world to know what happened to Heather. As Jeff and Lizzie try to leave, Steve reappears, holding a knife. Jeff tells him to drop it. Even flooded with obedience drugs, Steve won't do it. That's the proof. The drugs can't erase what matters most to him. This place is his entire identity. Steve charges. In the chaos, he manages to inject Lizzie with multiple doses of Darkenflox. She spirals immediately. Jeff tackles Steve. The fight is brutal. The control device hits the ground and shatters. Jeff smashes Steve into the wall, breaking his movie pack. The chemicals flood Steve's system, leaving him weak and barely conscious. Jeff doesn't hesitate. He grabs the keys, rushes to Lizzie, and tears the device off her back just in time. She apologizes for not confessing sooner. Jeff tells her it doesn't matter. He still loves her. As they escape, Steve makes a final move. Over the intercom, he tells the other inmates that if they want their comfortable lives, they need to stop Jeff and Lizzie. At the same time, Steve spots police approaching on the security feed. He grabs what he can and escapes in his private plane. Jeff and Lizzie are confronted by other inmates on the way out. Sarah and Ray try to stop them. They push through. Dave steps in next, but Lizzie distracts him by throwing him the pantry key. Others chase them, but Jeff and Lizzie make it down the final hallway and lock the door behind them. They reach the shore just in time to see Steve flying away. They steal a boat and head out onto the water. When Mark arrives with the police, Steve is already gone. It doesn't matter. Under the influence of N40, Steve mistakes a mountain for something beautiful. His plane crashes straight into it. From the water, Jeff and Lizzie see the explosion. That's when Jeff finally understands something. No drug can erase guilt. No chemical can create forgiveness. That part has to come from inside. And for the first time in a long time, he feels free.